described as a miracle. 4 days after the massive earthquake, a man has been found alive in Oakland, California, amidst the rubble of Freeway 880.
This is NBC Nightly News, reported by Maria Shriver.
Good evening from Los Angeles. Just when everyone had all but given up hope that there would be any survivors found in the earthquake rubble of Interstate 880, a man has been found alive. Yes, found alive. This morning, 89 hours after Tuesday's 6.9 quake, 57-year-old Buck Helm from Weaverville, California, was pulled from his crushed car by rescue workers and taken to a nearby hospital where he is reported to be in critical but guarded condition. George Lewis has more on this miraculous find.
This was the moment the rescue workers had been hoping and praying for since the beginning. A miracle in the rain. 57-year-old Buck Helm of Weaverville, California, alive after 3.5 days of being trapped in the wreckage of the Interstate 880 freeway.
They brought a man out alive. He waved his arms. We saw him wave his arms as he was being brought out, and after he had been lowered to the ground. It was just an incredible and a wonderful sight to see this man come out after some 89 hours and to come out and be alive and to be able, as he was, to wave his arms. And I can't say too much for those heroic people who went in.
The search and rescue operation had been halted because of bad weather when Helm was discovered by an engineer from the California State Department of Transportation, Caltrans. The engineer called for help.
I personally, myself and the Caltrans engineer went up and got what we believed to be a positive sign that the individual was, in fact, still alive. Good color and a movement from his hand at the side of his head that gave us our first key to start. At that time, we put everything together, brought everything into operation, went in, shored, and from the east side of Pillar 100, effected a rescue.
Paramedic Diana Moore also crawled into the hole as the rescuers risked their own lives to keep Buck Helm going.
I was overwhelmed. It was wonderful. It's a wonderful feeling.
He was lapsing into and out of consciousness. Reporters wanted to know what he was saying.
Just get out of here. When am I going to get out of here in this?
It took almost 6 hours to extract Helm from the collapsed freeway. He was rushed to Highland General Hospital in Oakland. The doctors said Helm was dehydrated and cold, but in pretty good shape considering what he had experienced.
But he is communicative and is responding appropriately to medication and to therapy at this point. So we're very pleased, obviously, that he has survived in the situation that he has, first of all, and that his condition right now, all things being considered, is fairly optimistic.
He's awake and alert and confused. He's able to cooperate with the medical team. It doesn't appear that we have to go to the operating room at this time.
A friend who shares the same last name, Richard Helm, rushed to the hospital.
I was overjoyed. I was really happy. I had to rush right down here, and I mean, that's a miracle. This guy's strong.
Did you know
I mean, he's a hero.
Also among the heroes, the rescuers, who never gave up hope of finding somebody alive in that structure, in spite of official pronouncements that probably nobody survived. Maria?
George, no doubt the rescue workers are extremely buoyed by today's events. Do they think they'll find other survivors now?
One of them said, we're all pumped up. We're hoping to find some more people in there alive. All along, they had been saying there must be pockets inside that structure. And there must be pockets where people can be found still alive.
George, do they have any indication as to how exactly Buck Helm actually did survive this?
Apparently, as one of the steel beams was sitting at an angle on top of his car. His car was not completely crushed on the driver's side. They found Buck Helm lying down on the front seat, the seatbelt still tightly strapped around him. The seatbelt also may have saved his life when the car came to an abrupt halt during the earthquake. He didn't receive any massive head injuries because he had his seatbelt on.
So that prevented him from having any injuries to the head?
Yeah, most of his injuries, they're still assessing them at this hour, seem to be to his lower legs. The seatbelt did cut off some circulation. He may have a skull fracture, but the doctors don't believe it's serious, and they're very optimistic.
George Lewis, thank you so much, reporting from Oakland, California. President Bush described the rescue of Helm as a tribute to the thousands of volunteers working tirelessly in the Bay Area. He said he is delighted that those efforts have saved another life. Also today, Mr. Bush, as expected, vetoed legislation that would have made federal funds available to poor women to have abortions in cases of rape or incest. He said the effort by Congress to expand the circumstances under which the government would pay for abortions was regrettable. We will have more on today's dramatic rescue and other news on NBC Saturday Nightly News in just a moment.
After you've produced the yearly report in record time, after you've made order out of paperwork chaos, after you've turned the slideshow into a colorful part of your winning proposal, and seen productivity become top priority, maybe after all that you'll know why Canon is the most popular copier in America. From personal to color laser copying, the choice is Canon. Call toll-free 1-800-OK-CANON.
Nothing, honey.
I asked a simple question.
Norman, are you eating something?
It's nothing, honey.
He lies like a dog.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch. Crisp golden flakes glazed with sweet honey and real roasted peanuts.
Irene, what's that you're playing?
Nothing, honey. Two can play this little game.
Kellogg's Nut and Honey Crunch.
While rescue workers were cheered that a longshoreman was pulled out alive from his crushed car along Interstate 880, there were other stories of earthquake horror today. In San Francisco, the body of a baby was found in the smoldering remains of the fire in the Marina District. And in Santa Cruz, miserable weather and aftershocks are adding to that hardship. Roger O'Neill has this report.
Tent cities have been set up in Watsonville as wary and scared residents said they don't want to stay in the emergency evacuation centers anymore. There have been too many aftershocks.
Why not stay here? We got our own place here.
Yeah.
We got our own food. Our tent's waterproof. You know? I'd just rather be here than there.
Outdoors, too.
It's too crowded in the office.
Yeah.
Too many people.
Too many people, right?
13,000 people are homeless in Santa Cruz County. The weather turned nasty today with rain, colder temperatures, and strong winds. But the people moving outside said they can deal with that. What they don't like are the aftershocks, which continue to shake the ground.
I have nothing left in the house. Everything broke. The house has a little bit of cracks in it.
There have been thousands of aftershocks since Tuesday's earthquake, the strongest occurring 37 minutes after the main shock. That registered 5.2 on the Richter scale, but as late as this morning, an aftershock approaching 5 was felt. The U.S. Geological Survey reported this morning the activity is normal following a big earthquake, despite the unnerving effect it has on people. On Wednesday, the number of aftershocks greater than 3 on the Richter scale numbered about 50, about what geologists expected. On day 2, Thursday, a slight increase in movement, but by Friday, a decrease. The decreasing number of aftershocks and their intensity is normal. What isn't normal is the way the Earth fractured in the big quake. Geologists say they are baffled by the pattern of cracks in the Earth.
The general sense of the cracking is opposite. So that instead of what we were calling right lateral with this side coming down, the left side is coming down. We have not seen this before on San Andreas type earthquakes anywhere in the world. There are other.
The scientists say in time they will be able to figure out what happened. But by then, there may be yet another earthquake to deal with. The geologists say the chances of an earthquake with a magnitude of 7 or more is still 50%, sometime in the next 30 years. Roger O'Neill, NBC News, Santa Cruz.
A natural disaster is a great equalizer, and so it is with the California earthquake. Don Oliver reports from San Francisco on 2 families from different walks of life who are trying to put their lives back together.
Jesse and Barbara Smith have been married for just 2 months. They met because both had apartments in this building in San Francisco's Marina District, a building heavily damaged by the earthquake. With friends, they went back today to retrieve their belongings.
We dumped everything that pretty much we can get out the window. Outlander yesterday.
They thought they had plenty of time to gather things up, but as they were working, building inspectors decided the structure was in worse shape than they had thought and said everyone had to be out in 15 minutes.
This was inspected at 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. We had a 4-point aftershock yesterday at 6. These two engineers have just discovered 3 inches of settlement on this side of the building.
The pace of moving increased rapidly. Barbara and Jesse consider themselves lucky. They had friends to stay with, and they have found another apartment.
It's been pretty awful. We were lucky we had some friends that lived on Lion Street in a house that was much more stable. Great.
And we've gone through pretty much the whole range of emotions, from feeling lucky to be alive, wondering what we're going to do, panicked, angry with the system.
The Smiths are sure of one thing: they'll never move back to the Marina District. The Chavez family isn't sure of much of anything. They've been staying in a shelter for the homeless since the quake damaged their apartment. Henry Chavez has been out of work for 2 months. Connie works as a janitor. Neither speaks English. Junior 11 and George 10 have to speak for them.
Right after the earthquake, she said that part of the roof, the second floor and the bottom, is falling.
The Chavezes moved from Nicaragua 10 years ago, have no money, but don't qualify for welfare. Volunteers at the shelter have tried to keep the children occupied, but it is obvious the earthquake is very much on their minds. Junior practiced for a puppet show.
And then everything started to shake, so I flew over here to see how everybody are.
And our hair was done like this.
The Chavez family has felt safe here in the shelter at the Moscone Convention Center, but their time of safety is about over. A convention is scheduled to start tomorrow, and the shelter will be closed. Don Oliver, NBC News, San Francisco.
Still to come on NBC's Saturday Nightly News, Bob Jameson takes us back to the moment it happened, Tuesday at 5:04 p.m. Do you remember where you were?
Trofeo. It's a new generation and we want a new horse.
Sequential port, fuel injection, anti-lock brakes.
It is come and we want a new horse.
Visual information center, handles great.
This Oldsmobile is not our father's.
New generation for the sons and daughters.
Trofeo. This is the new generation of Oldsmobile.
For a change of mood, change to Philips soft-tone pastel light bulbs.
I'm in the mood for love, simply because you're near me. Funny, but when you're near me, I'm in the mood for love.
Make everything seem more beautiful with new soft-tone pastels. It's time to change your bulb to Philips.
Having the flu is a nightmare. Your throat's so sore. You're congested. You cough. Body aches all over. But now, there's Theraflu, the first and only hot medicine made just for flu symptoms. Theraflu, with a hot liquid like doctors recommend. Strong therapy for fever and cough. Strong therapy for aches and pains. Next time the flu strikes you, strike back with Theraflu.
A Honduran airliner crashed today while trying to make a landing at Tegucigalpa's airport. As many as 144 people are feared dead, but at least 20 others survived. The Boeing 727 on a flight from Costa Rica slammed into the hills about 13 miles south of the city. As many as 20 Americans may have been aboard the flight, that according to the U.S. Embassy there. One American who survived has been identified as John Eugene Van Dyke. He's an Inspector General for the Agency of International Development in Honduras.
Witnesses say the plane just broke apart in midair. The Honduran airliner was preparing to land in very heavy winds. It crashed into a hill just south of the airport in Tegucigalpa. On impact, the 727 Boeing jet burst into flames. There were Americans on board the flight. At least 10 people have been rescued, including one American. But firefighters report that dozens of passengers were trapped in the burning wreckage. Many could not be reached because of the intensity of the fire. Some of the passengers were en route to Miami, where relatives and friends anxiously awaited the flight, but then learned of its fate. The flight originated in Costa Rica. It had a stopover in Managua, Nicaragua. The plane's black box has been located. The cause of the crash is under investigation.
The Air Force launched a Delta II rocket into orbit this morning. The rocket quickly deployed the fourth in a series of navigation satellites. The Delta II blasted off from its launch pad at Cape Canaveral, and as it headed east over the Atlantic, it boosted the Navstar satellite into orbit. A total of 21 Navstars will be deployed by 1992. Their purpose, to help guide American troop movements around the globe. The Delta launch was delayed 5 minutes while the Space Shuttle Atlantis passed near the rocket's flight path. The 5 Atlantis crew members conducted a series of experiments on their 4th day in space. The crew will land at Edwards Air Force Base in California on Monday morning. That's 1 orbit earlier than planned. The mission has been cut short out of concern for the high wind gusts that are predicted for California.
When Ocean Spray adds ripe red raspberries to tangy cranberries, something cool and refreshing happens to chicken. Cran Fruit brand sauces add a cool, refreshing zing to everything.
Did you know you could be losing business right this minute? Other 800 services take 50% longer than AT&T to connect your customers' calls. And that means they're more likely to hang up and not call back.
What takes so long?
With AT&T 800 service, you get more calls, and that can mean more sales. And isn't that why you have 800 service in the first place?
I'd like to make a reservation for the 17th.
Performance, another AT&T advantage.
If you thought you had to give up comfort to get a close shave, Norelco says, think again. Their revolutionary shaving system shaves skin close in a way that's incredibly comfortable. As the hair enters the chamber, the patented lift and cut system lifts each hair and holds it a split second before a blade cuts it, so it's possible to shave skin close without the blades even touching the skin. The lift and cut shaving system from Norelco. We made close comfortable.
Billy has a girlfriend. Billy has a girlfriend.
Napa, because there are no unimportant parts.
This plum is one of the very best sources of fiber. Once it turns into a prune, prunes, the high-fiber fruit.
Hungary's new interim head of state, who takes over on Monday, says Hungary could someday become a neutral state like Finland or Austria. Matthias Seros, who says he is a believer in democratic socialism, says Hungary, still a member of the Warsaw Pact, should begin working toward neutrality. That would be another change for a country in which these days sweeping change has become the normal course of affairs. NBC's Jim Bitterman reports from Budapest.
It has been a sunny autumn in Hungary, but it's not just the change of seasons that's in the air here. Politically, economically, socially, change is being steadily drawn through every avenue of Hungarian life. In a single week, the parliament has completely revised the nation's constitution, declared Hungary a democracy, approved free and open multi-party elections, and even changed the name of the country. No longer is it a socialist people's republic, but simply the Republic of Hungary. Out in the political hustings this afternoon, the former communist, who is Hungary's leading presidential candidate, was pressing the flesh, doing what no communist here has ever had to, campaigning for votes. And at the same moment, in a packed Budapest hall, the leading opposition party was preparing to endorse the man who will be its presidential candidate. The country, especially to someone with a longer view, like historian Vera Botchkoy, seems to be racing to leave its years of communism behind.
How quick this change is in the last 2 years went over. That was really a surprise.
Those who are pushing the changes here never lose sight of the series of events that began during the days of autumn, exactly 33 years ago this weekend. Then, too, the government renounced communism. Just as today, the symbols of communist rule came tumbling down. But then, unlike today, those in Moscow who believed in and directed the communist empire had the will and the means to crush Hungary's political delinquency under the treads of their tanks. Today's reformers expect no such outcome.
I was 11 when the revolution broke out in 1956, and we don't want to see ruined buildings, killed people anymore. So it is why we want to make a peaceful revolution.
If those leading the reform no longer want or seem unduly worried about a confrontation in the streets, they face other battles on other fronts. Battles to shake Hungarians out of their weary skepticism of all things political, especially those of the next generation who will have to make democratic reform work.
How can I change? So it's a very difficult question, and I don't know whether these new politicians really know what they have to do.
But if some remain doubtful, many of those who were here in 1956, who can compare the hope that was crushed back then with that which is alive again now, seem confident the country is headed in the correct direction. On a peaceful autumn day, when change is in the air, 83-year-old Peter Fulop can hobble along, remembering the bitter fighting which took place in this very square 33 years ago. He is finally free to openly express the vindication many of his generation now share. Communism, says Fulop, has failed. Jim Bitterman, NBC News, Budapest.
After years of resistance to change, East Germany's communist leadership today conceded that there may be important lessons to be learned from Mikhail Gorbachev's reforms in the Soviet Union. That admission from East Germany's new Communist Party chief came as thousands of pro-democracy activists rallied in East Berlin to keep up the pressure for change. The protesters formed a human chain and marched in silence, following almost daily protests that have turned into the greatest challenge to East Germany's rigid communist system in many, many years. In one lessening of that rigidity, East German government officials announced today that they have completed a draft of a law to ease travel to the West. They said it will be ready for discussion early next week.
When arthritis specialists are concerned about aspirin irritation, this is the brand they recommend most. Not Bayer, Ecotrin, with the orange safety coat to help protect your stomach. The more aspirin you take, the more you need the right brand. That's Ecotrin, and that's the truth.
You know, looking like you never get any older is not all it's cracked up to be. You don't get the respect you deserve for the amount of time you put in the business. You can't grow a decent mustache, and you have a tough time getting the 30% seniors discount at Quality, Comfort, or Clarion to drive a guy to drink.
Seniors save 30% by calling 800-221-2222. That's 800-221-2222.
I should be dead. Last year, as I was driving home, I approached a hill. I saw something more frightening than anything I have ever seen. I tried to get out of its way. It was too late. I had a head-on crash with a 28,000-pound truck. I'm still alive today because of an airbag in my car.
Allstate supports airbags because they save lives and lower insurance costs.
Subaru apologizes to the residents of Casa Grande, Arizona, for driving the new Subaru Legacy 60,000 miles in 19 days for a new world record. If you're listening, Casa Grande, thank you.
Finally, there are some of those moments from Tuesday that are etched in our collective memories. The first rumble at Candlestick Park, the initial confusion, the pictures of despair, the pictures of relief. They're all already committed to memory. The question, where were you at 5:04 p.m. on Tuesday? It's a particularly poignant one for the people of San Francisco. NBC's Bob Jameson reports.
Bars and neighborhood restaurants filled in San Francisco. For the first time since the earthquake, people felt like going out. They simply wanted to be with each other to talk about what happened.
I thought this was the big one. This was it. And I wasn't going to see anybody again. I was all by myself, and it was very frightening.
This is probably the historic event in my life that I'll never forget where I was and what I was doing.
For everyone who was in San Francisco, that moment, 5:04 p.m., is frozen in time. This is the upper deck of Candlestick Park, and this is where I was when the quake hit. As the stadium shook and rocked, I looked to my left and saw a workman 100 feet up on a swaying light tower, holding on. He climbed down safely when the quake ended. Benjamin Young had climbed the tower to straighten out a windsock just before the quake hit. Young will always remember where he was.
God, that whole thing was going like this. I fell down to my knees like I'm holding on. Oh, man.
At 5:04 p.m., Mary Larson was in full view of the surveillance camera in the electronics store where she works. While the surveillance tape stopped, Mary Larson's memories have not.
Maybe 10, 15 seconds, but the longest 10 seconds of my life.
911 emergency. Oh my God, we're having an earthquake. Wait a minute. Hold on.
The terror, the fear caused by the quake was captured forever in the San Francisco Police Communications Center, in the voices of those who dialed 911.
Earthquake, the upper deck of the Bay Bridge has collapsed on Oakland side. The upper deck of the Bay Bridge has collapsed? 911 emergency. Oh my, I don't seem like I can take much more. Ma'am, I know. Just hang in there. Everybody just wait.
The terror is gone from the voices now, but San Franciscans feel the need, almost the compulsion, to relive those moments.
What went through my mind is, oh my God, is this it? I don't know if this is it or not. I don't know if I'm going to die. And so you're sort of living on the edge a little bit.
Carol Maloof and Jeannie Dykesel survived the quake of 1989, and for now at least, are not worrying about where they will be when the next one comes. Bob Jamieson, NBC News, San Francisco.
An amazing week and an amazing day. Before we leave you tonight, we want to just update you again on today's extraordinary rescue of 57-year-old Buck Helm. Helm was found this morning amidst the rubble of Freeway 880 by rescue workers who had all but given up hope of finding any survivors. His first words reportedly were, "Thank God I'm alive." Onlookers cheered. Helm waved before being rushed off to a nearby hospital where he is at this moment. He reportedly is suffering from 3 broken ribs, and because of kidney damage, he may have to be on a dialysis machine. When one of Bucky's co-workers heard that he was alive, he was heard to remark, "We figured that if anybody could make it, Bucky Helm could. He's tough, he's a fighter." He's also incredibly lucky. Well, that is our news. Be sure to join me along with Garrick Utley tomorrow morning on Sunday Today. We'll follow up on Buck Helm's amazing rescue, and we'll look at the dramatic changes occurring in East Germany. The guests on Meet the Press will be California's Lieutenant Governor Leo McCarthy and Senator Alan Cranston. They'll be joined by Senator Patrick Moynihan from New York. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Maria Shriver in Los Angeles. I'll see you back here next Saturday. For all of us at NBC News, good night.